Hi Camp Zephyr, it's Aqua, and I came out here today to go kayaking, and it's kind of choppy out here as you can see, so I probably won't be able to go kayaking today. But instead, I want to tell you a story about Jesus when he was in a boat and it was stormy like this. So I thought it would be perfect to tell you that story today. So this story comes from the Gospel of Matthew, and I know the past couple of weeks we've been talking about stories that Jesus told and these parables and things that he said. But now we're going to talk about things that he did, these miracles, these crazy things that told the world who Jesus was. So this story starts when his disciples were all together and they were talking to these crowds. And it was getting really crowded because these people really wanted to see Jesus, talk to Jesus, and they were at a point where they needed a break. So they all got on some boats and they were going to cross over the lake. But at some point in the middle of the lake, a huge storm came out of nowhere. And it was rocking the boat, and there were waves, there was wind, there was rain, and they were terrified that they were going to die. So that's where our story starts. I'm going to read it to you, and then we can talk a little bit more about it. Okay. So, then he got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. Without warning, a furious storm came upon the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us! We're going to drown." He replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." Okay, so that's the story. So just like I was saying, it was rocky, it was crazy. Just imagine the worst storm you've ever been in. Maybe you've been on a boat and you were terrified that you were going to sink. Or maybe you were on land and you were just terrified because the storm was scary. Well, imagine that storm. That's how the disciples felt. But Jesus was sleeping. He didn't even know what was happening. So they woke him up and he's like, "Guys, I got this." And he told the winds and the waves to just cease, to stop. And this was the first time his disciples had seen Jesus control nature. This was huge. Because before this, they only knew that God could control nature. It was just like the Genesis story, just like creation. God has the power to control nature, to create. But now they knew that Jesus also had that power. It was crazy. They were freaking out. The man that they had been following was God's son. And it was finally starting to set in for them. So, I feel like I can relate to this story because my days have been ruined by storms over and over again. Sometimes I've had like a soccer game or a basketball game that I wanted to do, or a hike, or I wanted to do a picnic or kayak on a day like this, but I couldn't because it was stormy. It was kind of like that. But this is a cool reminder that Jesus has the power to control nature. And I definitely do not. And so I think that is a very cool thing. So one last thing I want to say about this story is that we're in a time in our world where it seems like everything's out of control. And we can't do anything about it. And that may be true. But with all this coronavirus happening and quarantining and staying safe at home, it's important to remember that Jesus still has control. still has that power. And that doesn't mean that bad things aren't going to happen. And we know that from the news, bad things are happening. And you should ask your parents about that, because it's a really good conversation to have. So bad things are going to happen, but we know that Jesus has the power to control the storm. So I hope that's encouraging for you today. And I'm so excited for you all to show up here this summer. And I really hope the weather is way better than this. See you then.